Hi everyone, how are you doing? I hope you're all well. These couple of weeks we've been very busy. We didn't manage to record any content, and we are sorry for that today. But it's important that you all know whenever such things happen, it's not my fault, it's the other's fault. ከዛ ደግሞ መልካም አዲስ ዓመት ሳንባባል ሁሉም ሰላም የሆነ ጥሩ የሆነ ነገር እንመኝላችኋለን። Today we're back with another topic that is creativity. So we'd like to talk about that. We hope you enjoyed the topic and the conversation, and make sure to share it with others so they can join and join our conversation as well. So I will start my question with: do you guys think everyone is creative?
Yeah, we're back. Is everyone creative? Uh, it depends. I don't think it's like something we can conclusively say that just by natural means we're all creative. It's also a bit of a choice at times. Like some people prefer not to have creative activities in their life, and when I say creative, it sort of means the typical creative works like it could be art, it could be any kind of music or something like that, or something new in the form of you know in the form of art, in any form of art. So in that sense, I don't think everyone is creative, but there is a possibility to be so, uh, if you put the effort in. I think that's always possible, but then again, there comes the question of choice, I think. So as far as it goes, that's how I see it. Does that make sense?
ጥሩ እስቲ መጀመሪያ ክሪኤቲቭ ምንድን ነው በሚለው ጀምር ደስ ይለኛል። እሱን ዲፋይን ላድርግ። ለእኔ ክሪኤቲቪቲ ማለት ሁለት የማይገናኙ ነገሮች የሚገናኙበትን ፖይንት አንደርስታንድ አድርጎ ሚኒንግ ማውጣት ነው ክሪኤቲቭ። ቅድም ብስሬ እንዳለው ክሪኤቲቪቲ በተለያየ እንትን ቦታ ሊገለጽ ይችላል። አርት ላይ፣ ቴክኖሎጂ ላይ፣ ብዙ ቦታ ላይ ይታያል። ሶ ክሪኤቲቭ በእኔ በአጭሩ ሁለት የማይገናኙ መስሉ ነገሮች አገናኝተን ሚኒንግ መስጠት ይመስለኛል በአጭሩ። ወደ ዋናው ጥያቄ ስመለስ ሁሉም ሰው ክሪኤቲቭ ነው ወይ የሚለው፣ ሁሉም ሰው ክሪኤቲቭ አይመስለኝም። ሁሉም ሰው ክሪኤቲቭ መሆን ይችላል፣ ግን ሁሉም ሰው ክሪኤቲቭ አይደለም። ምክንያቱም ክሪኤቲቭ ለመሆን ማለት እንደ ባህሪ እንደ ትሬት ልናሟላቸው የሚገቡ ነገሮች ይኖራሉ ብዬ አስባለሁ። እንዴት ነው የምናስበው? ፕሮሰስ ቶት ፕሮሰሳችን እንዴት ነው? ከሱ ከሰው ወደ ሰው ይለያያል። በአስተዳደጋችን በተለያዩ ፋክተሮችም አሉት። ፕሮሰስ ቶት አንድ ይሄ የምናስብበት መንገድ ለክሪኤቲቪቲ ወደ ክሪኤቲቪቲ መስደድ ነው አይደለም፣ እሱ ነው። ግን አዝሎንጋዝ አንድ ሰው ሄልዚ ከሆነ ባዮሎጂካል ሳይኮሎጂካል ችግር ከሌለ እና ትሬን ከተደረገ ክሪኤቲቭ መሆን ይችላል ብዬ አስባለሁ።
I think that was nice the way you expressed it. Again, I don't understand a lot of questions. Like, what do you mean, like connecting two things? I want to clearly understand that. So when you come back to that, maybe just explain a little bit on that.
ያ ልክ ነህ። በደንብ ኤክስፕሌን አላረኩትም መሰለኝ። ግን እኔ ምን ለማለት ፈልጌ መሰለ፣ አሁን ክሪኤቲቪቲ ስንል የሆነ ከሌለ ነገር እኮ የሆነ ነገር አናመጣም። ኦልሬዲ የሆነ የተለያዩ ነገሮች አሉ። ለምሳሌ እንደ ኤግዛምፕል አሁን እንኳን ማምጣት አልችልም፣ ግን ሁለት የተለያዩ ነገሮች አሉ። ለእኔ ክሪኤቲቪቲ ማለት ሁለቱም የተለያዩ ነገሮች አገናኝተህ በሁለቱ መሀል ያለውን ሪሌሽንሽፕ አንደርስታንድ አድርገህ የሆነ አዲስ ነገር መፍጠር ነው። ያንን ለማድረግ ግን ራሱ የሚጠይቀው የክሪኤቲቪቲ ቅድም ትሬት ያልኩት ነገር አለ። በቀላሉ ቪዥዋላይዝ እያደረግ አንደርስታንድ አድርገህ በሁለቱ መሀል ያለው ሪሌሽንሽፕ አንደርስታንድ አድርገህ ሚኒንግ ማውጣት ራሱ የቻለ ከባድ ነው። ቀላሉ እንትን አትልም። እኔ እንደዛ ፈልጌ ነው ሜይ ቢ አሁን ሴንስ ከሰጠ። ለምሳሌ ቢትኮይን መውሰድ እንችላለን። ቢትኮይን አዲስ ፈጠራ ነው አይደል? ግን ዲፕሊ ካየኸው ቢትኮይን ከኢንተርኔት አለ ገንዘብ አለ አይደል? ኢንተርኔት አለ ገንዘብ አለ። ሁለቱንም መርጅ አድርጎ ዲጂታል ከረንሲ የሚባል ነገር ተፈጠረ ማለት ነው። እንደዛ ፈልጌ ነው።
I think those are quite interesting points. On the top of Yalachus, I can only add on the top of choice and trainings and environment also affects whatever that we are exposed to. We tend to adapt some of the things and then we learn from them. So I think it's to effect which then leads me to my second question that says, how do you think then the abundance of information technology in our world right now affect creativity?
Yeah, I think the tech environment that we have right now, I think that's a medium for creativity on its own. I think prior to that, creativity was solely on the basis of artistic creativity in that sense, or it could also be invention. I don't know, some people try to distinguish between inventions and creativity on their own, like invention being a separate thing. But yeah, it's also possible to see it as one thing as well. It's in the end creating something out of nothing, or it could be connecting two things, as you said. But yeah, I think that's the change that the sort of the tech revolution that brought on into this creative mentality or creative process. It, in a way, it's revolutionized it as well, because nowadays it's much easier to be creative than it was back before the tech revolution, you might say. There's a lot of ways that you can sort of make creative works nowadays and get to learn to be creative as well. There are even courses on how to be creative nowadays as well. So it's much easier to be creative now. But then it also sort of opens the barrier too much at times as well, where everything becomes a creative work in that sense. So there is no filter to what creativity has as a standard in its own way. Although I don't believe that it has any standards for that matter, but it's also a bit fuzzy to sort of distinguish between something that's truly, life-changing in the sense of creativity and something that's just barely a normal part of our day, I guess. So there's a fuzzy line in that sense that it brought up, but in the end, it's also a positive engagement that it brought in with its revolution, the technology.
Okay. ብዙ የተለየ ሀሳብ ከአንተ ብዙ የተለየ ማለት ባልከው እስማማለሁ። አንዳንድ ፖይንት ለመጥቀስ ግን የኢንፎርሜሽን አባንደንስ ዲስትራክሽን ፎከስ ሉዝ እንድናደርግ ዲስትራክሽን ሶርስ ነው ብዬ አስባለሁ። ክሪኤቲቭ ለመሆን አንድ የሚያስፈልገው ነገር ምንድን ነው? ፎከስ ምንድን ነው? ካልም ሆነን ማሰብ። አሁን ጭንቅላታችሁ ዲፕ ገብተን ካየን ክሪኤቲቭ የምንሆነው ብሬናችሁ ውስጥ ያሉት ኒውሮንስ ካልም ሲሆኑ ነው። አለመረጋጋት ካለ ጭንቅላታችሁ ውስጥ አለመረጋጋት ካለ፣ ለምሳሌ ብዙ ኢንፎርሜሽን ኮንሱም በማድረግ ሊሆን ይችላል፣ ነገሮችን ክሊርሊ አንደርስታንድ ማድረግ አንችልም። እሱ ክሪኤቲቭ እንዳንሆን ያደርገናል ማለት ነው። ሌላው እዚህ ጋር መጥቀስ የምፈልገው ምንድን ነው? ባለፈውም ስለ ሶሻል ሚዲያ ምናምን ዲስከስ እናደርግ ተስፋ ነበረ። እነዚህ ትልቅ ካምፓኒዎች ፌስቡክ፣ ጉግል ምናምን እነሱ ራሱ ዴሊብሬትሊ ለኢኮኖሚ የራሳቸውን ኢኮኖሚ ቢውልድ ለማድረግ ቢውልድ የሚያደርጓቸው ቱሎች ላይ አቴንሽን ሲክ ያደርጋሉ። አንቺ ሳትወጂ በግድሽ እነዛ ቱሎች ላይ ዲፔንድ ታደርጊያለሽ። ክሬቲቭ የምትሆኝበት ታይም እነሱ ይሻሙሻል ማለት ነው። ዴሊብሬትሊ ቱሎቻቸው ላይ የተለያዩ የሳይኮሎጂ ማኒፑሌሽን ኤሌመንቶች ይጨምራሉ ዴሊብሬትሊ ማለት ነው። ይሄም አንድ ትልቅ ፋክተር ይመስለኛል።
I think we try to address there is a negative side to it and there is also a positive side to it. The fact that it makes it easier for us to stumble up on a lot of things and then try to come up with something new. That's a positive thing, but also at the same time it sucks our attention away, that we're not using our full potential to be creative. So we're kind of trying to mention those two, I guess. It actually reminds me of what when you talk about before, like where the line is becoming blurry. What is creative anymore? Because everything is out there, and then you can just connect some things and then create something. So it reminds me of what Midjourney are doing, where last time we tried to talk about it, where people don't have to draw with their hands anymore, but they can just write what they want, and then AI can actually draw those things, to the extent that these people are actually showcasing those arts and getting prizes for them. So it just completely changed the whole view of art. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that, and if you have other points to add, I would leave it to you.
Yeah. As you said, multiple ways of looking at the effect of technology in the sense on creativity, and that's, I think, it's not only just about the positive side or the negative side. There are multiple dimensions which you can look at it, each of them having a positive and negative effect. And one of them is that it creates like a boost for ways to be creative. An easy way, and one example to look at it is, there's YouTube. YouTube can either be a way where a place where you spend your time and not be creative on one side, or a place where you spend your time creating content. And also on one side, when you look at that content as well, there is no sort of pure sense of creativity about it. It's all replicated stuff. Like nowadays, if you look at YouTube, most of the content there is either done by someone else at some point, or even by the person itself. So there's always like a fuzzy line around there that sort of gives a different way to look at how creativity has changed through time. Because if you look back in history, there is like a very easily like identifiable way that you can see creativity, where there are much less things available in this world, so it's easier to sort of figure out a problem and say, yeah, I can solve this by something that I can come up with my mind, either connecting something or whatever. But nowadays, it's, for one, it's much saturated with either its information or with very accessible things nowadays. So there's, even though it seems like there are far more problems to solve, there's also far less, easily, attackable problems that you can find to solve with this sort of creativity. And then when you go to the dimension where, creativity in the form of art and then colliding with like AI and those sorts of technologies, that also makes it a bit more fuzzy to even realize that, wait a minute, what does this mean for art? And is it still creative to sort of use AI to create art as well? So
Yeah, and hopefully our audiences have something to say. If you have anything to share, please do share it with us as well. It's actually important. When you were talking, you also mentioned, both of you tried to address some points that we talked before, like social media and stuff, how they affect us. So like where he said YouTube can actually be a place where you can provide a content on yourself, or a place where you can sit and consume all these things that are prepared by other people. So it's also important to be conscious and make the decision that we are doing. So at the end of the day, it becomes our choice to do what we want to do. So I think it's important point to highlight. Having said that, if you don't have anything to add, I would like to talk about what do you guys think of our country's curriculum towards creativity? Like, how does it affect it? Can be positive or negative. So how do you feel about that in general?
እኔ ይመስለኛል ካሪክለሙ ክሬቲቪቲን ፕሮሞት የሚያደርግ አይደለም። በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ብቻ አይደለም፣ ሌሎች ሀገራት ላይ ያለው ካሪክለም ክሬቲቪቲ እንትን የሚል አይደለም፣ ፕሮሞት የሚያደርግ ልጆች ላይ ማለት ነው። ለምንድን ነው ለምሳሌ ወደ ኢትዮጵያ ከመጣ እስከ 10ኛ ክፍል እስከ 10ኛ ክፍል ሁሉም ተማሪ ተመሳሳይ ኮርስ ነው የሚወስደው። አብዛኛው ሰው ኢንትረስት የሚያደርገው ነገር ላይ አይደለም ጊዜውን የሚያጠፋው። ስፔሻላይዜሽን የለም። ሁሉም ሰው የተለያየ ላይ የሆነ አንድ አይነት ነገር ላይ ኢንትረስት የለውም። አንድ ሰው ክሬቲቭ የሚሆነው ኢንትረስት የሚያደርገው ላይ ከሰራ ነው። እንደዚህ አይነት ኢንቫይሮንመንት አይደለም ካሪክለም፣ እንደዚህ አይነት ኢንቫይሮንመንት ፕሮቫይድ አያደርግም። ሌላ ትምህርት ቤት ውስጥ እንድንሸመድድ ነው ብዙ ጊዜ የሚፈልገው። ሸምድደን አስታውሰን ፈተና እንድናልፍ ነው የሚፈልገው። የኛ ኢንተለጀንስ የሚለካው በምናመጣው ግሬድ ነው። አሳይመንት የሆነ ሲሰጡ ክሬቲቪቲ ማዕከል ያደረገ አይደለም። ያው መንግስቱም ያምናል ኳንቲቲ ላይ እንጂ ኳሊቲ ላይ ብዙ ቴኬር አይደረግም። ኢን ጀነራል ካሪክለሙ ክሬቲቪቲን ፕሮሞት የሚያደርግ አይደለም፣ በተለይ ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ያለው ካሪክለም።
I think it's a bit obvious. I think a lot of us would agree on that it's not encouraging for creativity in any way. But it would be interesting to also ask what would make it be so, what would make it more open towards creativity or more encouraging towards creativity, and also to see what other countries have done as well, even to criticize it as well if we're capable of doing that. Is the way of teaching children in America or Netherlands here, for that matter, is it far more better in terms of allowing them to be more creative, for that matter? That's also a good question to raise, and what things can be replicated in our country to make that change as well. And in my opinion, I mean, there are good things to sort of to appreciate in our sort of curriculum as well, because the reason that it is the way it is, I think, is because it's producing what it needed at the time. Not at the moment, but at the time before, at some point when it was generated, that was what was needed. Because the society or the people there, what we needed was that this productive society where it's much more informed, they're much more knowledgeable and with a lot of education. That's what it was needed at the time. So it did that at that point. But now I think even people going out, starting their lives, they're sort of realizing that, we've missed out a lot on that stuff. So they're getting into this diverse way of learning where you go to alternative means of learning. It could be either YouTube or training some sort of course in art classes and stuff. So I think we're at that point to say that it needs a lot of change in that sense. And also, where is the possibility of these alternative means of learning can help in this sense as well? We should not always expect that the curriculum should be the main source of these kinds of changes or this encouragement towards creativity, for that matter, because I think the platform is also changing. Education by itself, it's becoming a bit, something of an old thing. Not that I believe that it is, but it is being forced to be so, because there are very many ways of learning nowadays. And how does that play together as well? So that's something to think about, in my opinion.
ሁለት ኤግዛምፕልስ እሺ የስትራክቸርድ መሆኑ ጉዳቱ እንደ ኤግዛምፕል እኔ አንድ ማቀው ሰው አለ በስራ ማቀው ሰው አለ 11ኛ ክፍል 10ኛ ወር 11ኛ ክፍል ነው ትምህርቱን ያቋረጠው የሆነ ድርጅት ውስጥ ገባ ልጁ ከኛ በተለየ በጣም ክሪኤቲቭ ነበረ በዛ በነበርንበት ስራ እንትን ላይ ማለት ነው ሶ እኔ ሳስብ ለምንድነው ልጁ ከኛ የተሻለ ክሪኤቲቭ የሆነው ቢሳስብ ምንድነው አንደርስታንድ ያደረኩት ልጁ በራሱ መንገድ ነው የሚያስበው የራሱ የሆነ የኢንፎርሜሽን ኮንሱም ማድረጊያ መንገድ አለው ቦክስ ውስጥ አይደለም እኛ በትምህርት ሂደት ውስጥ ስናልፍ አይታይም ማለት አንደርስታንድ አናደርገውም ግን somehow የሆነ ዴቨሎፕ ያደረግነው ካልቸራል የኢንፎርሜሽን ኮንሱም ማድረግ ሶ ፈተና አካባቢ ሲደርስ ነው የምታነቢው ምናምን እና ሜሞሪ ፎከስድ ነው ሜሞሪ ቤዝድ ነው ኖሌጅ ቤዝድ ነው የሆነ ነገር አንደርስታንድ አድርገህ የሆነ ኢንፎርሜሽን ኮንሱም አድርገሽ ከዚህ ምን ማውጣት እችላለሁ የሚል ፕሮሞት የሚያደርግ አይደለም ሶ ለዛ ይመስለኛል ልጁ ከኛ የተሻለ ክሪኤቲቭ የሆነው ፍሪደም አለ በራሱ ዓለም የሚንቀሳቀሰው አንዴ ሌላም ፖይንት መጥቀስ የምፈልገው ቅድም ብስሬ ሌሎች ሀገሮች ምን ተሞክሯል ያልከው ማለት ነው እኔ አንድ ያየሁት ነገር አለ የሆነ ሰዓት ላይ ሃይ ስኩል ያለው ጃፓን ለሁለት ሳምንት የመቆየት እድል አግኝቼ ነበርና ሁለት የተለያዩ ትምህርቶችን ቪዚት አድርገን ነበር አንደኛው የኮሚኒቲ ስኩል ነው ሁለተኛው ደግሞ የሳይንስ ስኩል ነው ሁለቱንም በአንድ ቀን ውስጥ ቪዚት ጧትና ከሰዓት ቪዚት አድርገን ነበር እና ምንድነው ያየሁት ኮሚኒቲ ስኩል ላይ ሄደን እንደዚህ ኤክስፒሪየንስ ሼር ስናደርግና ስንጠይቃቸው ተማሪዎቹ ስለ ባዮሎጂ ስለ ኬሚስትሪ የሚያውቁት አንድ ነገር የለም ምንም የሚያውቁት ነገር የለም ኬሚስትሪ ምንድነው ኬሚስትሪ ማለት ኬሚስትሪ እንወስዳለን ባዮሎጂ ምናምን እንወስዳለን ብዬ ትዝ ይለኛል ስጠይቀው ምንድነው ኬሚስትሪ ምንድነው ባዮሎጂ ይለኛል እሱ ሶሻል ላይ ነው ኢኮኖሚክስ ምናምን እነዚህ እንትኖች ብቻ ነው ማስተር የሚያደርገው ልጁ ከዛ ከሰዓት ደግሞ ወደ ሳይንስ ስኩል ስንሄድ ደግሞ ስለ ሂስትሪ ስለ ምንም አይዲያ የላቸው እንትናቸው ይሄ ላቦራቶሪያቸው በጣም ፉል ነው ፕሮፌሽናል ገና ልጆች ናቸው ግን ፕሮፌሽናል ናቸው በጣም እንትናቸው ስፔሻላይዝድ ናቸው በዛ ኤሪያ ላይ ማለት ነው እኛ ዩኒቨርሲቲ ላይ ራሱ ማንሰራውን ስራ ሲሰሩ ያየ ነው ሶ እኛ ሀገር አመላ ፈልጌ ነው ኖሌጅ ቤዝድ ነው ኖሌጅ ደግሞ በራሱ ኖሌጅ ክሪኤቲቭ እንድትሆን ያደርግሽ ክሪኤቲቭ እንድትሆን ኖሌጅ ስኪል ቶት ሜካኒዝም ፕሮሰስ አስፈላጊ ነው እነሱን ቢውልድ ያሮግ ይመስለኛል እነዚህ ያሟሉ ይሄዱ ይመስለኛል እኛ ላይ ግን ይሄ የለም ለሱ አብዛኛው ሰው ምንም አይዲያ የለውም ማለት ኢነርጂ አልኩኝ በኢንጂነሪንግ ተመርቆ ሶሻል ላይ ነው የሚሰራው ያ ሁሉ አመት ለኔ ዌስት ነው ምናልባት አንዳንድ ሰዎች ምን ብለው ሊከራከሩ ይችላሉ የሆነ መጀመሪያ ብሮድ የሆነ ኖሌጅ ይኖርና ከዛ በኋላ እኔ አልስማማም በዚህ ምክንያቱም እንደውም ቾይስ ይበዛል ኦፕሽኖች ይበዛሉ ሰትል አታረጊ ለዛ እኮ ነው አንድ ሰው ወይ ዶክተር ነው ወይ ሹፌር ነው ወይ ማለት የሆነ አንድ ሰው የሆነ ቦታ ላይ ብቻ ኤክስፐርት ሊሆን የሚችለው አይደል ሶ ፎከስ ማለት የሆነ ቦታ ላይ አናርፍም ብዙ ኦፕሽን ይኖራል ኬሚስትሪ ባዮሎጂ ሂስትሪ ምናምን ብዙ ኦፕሽን ይኖረናል እሱ ጋር ማለት በየትኛው ኤሪያ ላይ የኛ ኢንትረስት የትኛው ኤሪያ ነው ምናምን ብለን ማስተር ለማድረግ በዛ ኤሪያ ክሪኤቲቭ ለመሆን አይጋብዘን
Okay, I think it's interesting. I can see a lot of good things and a lot of, but one can argue kind of questions in what Tek was mentioning. Yeah, focus ቢሆን አሪፍ ነው ይሄ ሆሊስቲክ መሆኑ ቶት ፕሮሰሱ ያሰፋል ወይ ምናምን I think it's going to be something huge and በደንብ መታየት ያለበት ምናምን but I would like to say one thing ይሄ ራይት ኤንድ ሮንግ ላይ የተመሰረተ ላይክ ባውንድሪ ተደርጎ መሆኑ ኤፌክት ያደርጋል ብዬ አስባለሁ። አሁን ምን ትዝ አለኝ እንደውም I don't know if you remember today, but I don't know if we take the same course, yani, but there was this exam where we were allowed to say anything, but we're just based on our arguments, not based. There is no right and wrong. It's whatever we provide. argumentaችን ነበረ ዊን የሚያደርገው እንጂ እንደዚህ አይነት ፈተና ውስጥ ያውቃለሁ። I find it very interesting. So ግን አብዛኛው የኛ ጋር አሁን growing up it's more like distinguish ለማድረግም ምናምን you can understand how can they distinguish እንደዛ ማከው ነው ምናምን ማለት እንችላለን. But there are a lot of things they can work on the curriculum. I would just say that. I also understand that guide ያስፈልገናል ምናምን የተባለውም I also understand that because then one will be confused, and especially mature ካልሆንክ ምን መምረጥ እንዳለብህ ካላወቅ ምናምን እንደዚህ ጋይድ ከሌለ ደግሞ it will be a bit confusing to be where like you don't know where to start. At the same time ደግሞ እንደዚህ ስል in the back of my mind I'm also thinking, but who does what, like guide to what? This is for me a very open-ended question, and I cannot answer it. Like how guide መደረግ አለበት ብል who is going to guide me where, like who is responsible to do this? This is very vague and open question for me, but I will leave it as that. If you have anything to add.
Yeah. I think it's a good way to look at it, to the way you saw it, Dick. But one of the sort of the contradictions that I observed was that on the one side you sort of imagine that creativity is a process of connecting two dots, either from different disciplines or whatever. But then at this point you sort of criticize the structure being, you learn a lot of things, but then most of them would not be helpful in your life. But in the sense, it is helpful to your creativity, because if you learn a lot of things, you're able to connect the dots and say, oh, maybe this can help in this kind of knowledge that I have already. So yeah, I kind of observed that. I get what you mean though, because yeah, too many options is always difficult for any human being. That's the current problem we have for individual life, is basically too many options, and it's always confusing. But yeah, I think the focus should be on how to manage that for students in the grades 1 to 12, most importantly, because yeah, that's where a lot of the strong brain matters, or the top processes are generated. So that's where we need to focus a little bit more. But I think a lot of that exploration happens in right after you graduate, right after 12th grade. That's where a lot of that, exploring, like, wait a minute, I learned a lot of this stuff. What can I do with this? And then there will always be confusion, obviously. And then that's where I think most of this concrete matter of creativity also starts to sort of generate, or to sort of put a foundation in your life. And some people might even become, very creative at a young age, and you could easily tell that they're going to be some person that you will recognize their names of in the future as being creative in that sense, in any way that we can define it. But for the most part, I think a lot of that realization of your creativity happens in your bachelor's degree or any kind of diploma you take afterwards. uh, yeah, so that's how I see it. And I think most of in that sense, structuring the elementary or the high school stage of our education is somehow important, but it's also important to recognize what we can take from different forms of creating an education system. And as to the Japan example, I would also give the Western side of things, perhaps. That might be a good contrast. They teach a lot more subjects, and students are much more aware of different subjects that exist. Of course, you might be able, in high school, I think you can select a certain stream and focus on something. But in the end, the students will be aware of much more diverse set of subjects than I think Japan or something similar. I wasn't aware about that, so that's quite an interesting thing to know. But yeah, that's how I see it.
So, okay, I hope everyone enjoyed our conversation. So, we will just end it as so we talk about if everyone is creative, we talk about the abundance of information and its effect on creativity, and we also talk about our country's educational system, and we try to mention a few things that are some of our experiences. And so we can just say, yeah, a lot of thoughts need to be put on that because it's important. Whatever you provide during educating people is whatever the country becomes later on. So it's important to invest in that. Yeah, and we hope you all enjoy this, and make sure to share it with others so that they can join us, they can tell us what they think. And if you have any comments, anything you want to say, please do share it with us.
Like and subscribe.
And Bisrat and Jake are telling you to like and subscribe. Have an awesome time. Bye bye. Ciao.